Hello everybody and welcome to the Thursday edition of Video Clips, and today I'm going to give an answer to the question that so many of you have asked me via email. What is the motivation for all of this? Well, I have some ideas about it. I think government control is one of the motivations. I'm going to read you an email I got from somebody in Italy. I'm very worried about the future here in Italy. We're already under a dictator. Our prime minister was never elected by anyone. He changed the party he was leading during a governing crisis to create a new government with the people he was standing against in his first mandate. I know it looks like a B movie, and now he's trapped everyone in our homes, violating every possible article in our Constitution. We have police hunting down runners that are alone on the street, and even some instances of senior citizens who made a few meters out of their properties to tend to their gardens nearby, and apparently that's against the law. He stopped going to the parliament and now decides everything alone, even very important topics like the signing of MES. Maybe you have no idea what that is, but basically if we use it, we're going to end up like Greece did some years ago. He also created some task forces, one of which is allegedly against coronavirus fake news, and what it is a ministry of truth that silences or discredits every word of people like yours. Oh, and on top of that, they've already got a tracking app, which most likely will be made mandatory and will allow the government to know where everyone is at any given moment and look back on who you've been with. I'm so sad for our poor country and for our freedom. I hope that the people will fight back, but everybody is so hypnotized. Some people I know would want to shelter in place until we have 0 cases. Please protect at least the freedom of the USA, because my country is clearly in the hands of criminals. I truly hope from this there will be a mass awakening instead of the establishment of oligarchy. Here's one from the United States. Police in Westport, Connecticut have announced that they are testing a pandemic drone in order to identify sick people. Developed by the aerospace company Dragonfly, the drones are equipped with a sensor and a computer vision system that can determine if someone has an elevated temperature or if a person is coughing, and also measures heart and respiratory rates on a computer. One of the major problems for cities and towns like Westport in managing and responding to a pandemic like the COVID-19 virus is finding out who could be infected and how widespread the disease has spread, said Westport First Selectman Jim Marp. One way to do this is to look for underlying symptoms. The government worker thinks this is great. Police said the goal of the program is to provide better health monitoring support for potential people at risk, including the elderly or those with pre-existing health conditions. Police also plan to monitor how residents are social distancing in public areas where groups may be congregating, including beaches, train stations, parks, and shopping centers. The technology can detect certain infectious conditions from 190 feet away. Quote, this technology not only enhances the safety of our officers and the public, but the concept of using drones remains a go-to technology for reaching the most remote areas with little to no manpower needed. Wow, aren't you glad you're living in Connecticut, those of you who do? Now drones are going to keep track of who you are, where you go, what your temperature is today, gather data on your heart rate, your respiratory, breathing rate, and all that sort of thing. Unbelievable. Denmark has a law that allows for quarantines. People can be forced to receive vaccinations, and if they refuse to do this, access can be prohibited to public institutions, supermarkets, shops, public and private nursing homes, and hospitals. So you can't get health care and you can't buy food unless the government gets its way with you. Access to public transport can be prohibited, and people can be forced to be tested. The Ministry of Health announced that it would work with the Ministry of Justice to develop plans for how police will help to enforce the new law, and people can be punished for failure to comply. Back to the United States. Our friend Fauci, why the hell does he still have a job? In an interview on CNN on April 10th, he said that the government is considering issuing certificates of immunity to Americans in order to identify who has been infected, and he went on to say that he could imagine a time when people would be required to carry such identification in order to move around freely. Gotta love that guy being in charge of our lives, right? He also was asked in another radio show about announcements from Google and Apple about a plan to roll out a Bluetooth-based system that would allow the government to track people in order to identify who might have come in contact with an infected person. And here's what he said. I haven't personally consulted with them, but one of the sticky issues about that is there's a lot of pushback in this country to get someone or some organization, particularly if it's sponsored by the federal government. I think they'd feel better about it if it's private, to have GPS somebody know where you were and when you were there. Even though from a purely public health standpoint, that makes sense. You know, you could look at somebody's cell phone and say, you were next to these 25 people over the last 24 hours. Boy, I got to tell you, the civil liberties type pushback on that would be considerable, even though from a pure public health standpoint, it absolutely makes sense. Once again, glad he's in charge of the country right now and making decisions for all of us. And why, again, does this guy have a job using a model that was 96% off and still standing up there and saying it may be months, we may never go back to normal? And he actually said one time, it may be prohibited for people to shake hands at a certain point in time. I said on Tuesday, it's almost incomprehensible that people listen to this nonsense every day. It's nonsense, but it will happen if we don't do something about it. Stay tuned for some announcements on that. But they listen to this nonsense, they go, yeah, this is good. Fauci rocks. I definitely want drones watching me all the time and knowing where I'm going, and I definitely want the government gathering data on my health status as I move around, and I definitely want an immunity certificate that gives me permission to leave my house and go to work. Definitely all about that. Who thinks this way? Who thinks this way? I mean, I walk around and I see the people, you know, cowering behind the wall with their mask on, terrified to interact with human beings, and I guess that some of those people think this way, but this is what's coming, folks. This is what's coming if we don't do something about it. So think long and hard about what you're willing to give up and what kind of regime you want to live under, because regime is what's coming next. This is all about regime. This is what they do in communist countries. All right. So when I said on Tuesday that I haven't ruled out the idea that the government will set up re-education camps and all that for them, if they'll think about this kind of stuff, I certainly think that can't be far out of their mind. If we misbehave enough and don't do what we're told, we're going to have to take our country back, people. We're going to have to take our country back. All right, that's all for today. Please pass this on to anybody who you think would enjoy watching it. I'm not going to apologize for my anger. I am angry. I am publicly outraged about this. And my question is, why isn't everybody? Thank you for watching.